Hi, this is Kirk Fletcher with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Sure.
How does it feel to be releasing an album out there into the world in this COVID era when you can't really get out there and promote it as you would normally?
Well, being sort of more of a social media conscious musician, and following the lead of many other musicians who are, younger musicians, maybe not in the blues world, like, Snarky Puppy, Wolfpack, and Krungbin, and all these different bands like that. Social media is very important. So for me, I look at it on the flip side of it. I turn it around and go, maybe this is the perfect time to release a record, because everybody right now needs music. They want to listen to music, and they have the time to listen to it where they wouldn't have it normally, probably. So it's probably the perfect time to listen to. I wouldn't pick this time, I wouldn't choose this time, but, I'm dealt with this situation like many other times in my life, where I've had ups and downs, where I've had long periods of time where I didn't have any gigs, and just different transitions in my career. And this is just one of the many obstacles that I have to try and overcome. We all have to overcome.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with with that. For many blues artists, like they're just stuck in this small little world, and they don't really think outside of that, and there's, unfortunately, there's a lot of things like, Spotify and all these things that a lot of musicians think is the devil, or whatever, and it's really like, well, it's just a different medium to get across. I don't particularly like everything about it, but I have to accept it, to try and get further along with the thing that I love the most, which is music and making music,
So it's like a necessary evil, I guess.
Yeah, just like many other things, like money or anything else.
Speaking of social media, I noticed you've been doing quite a few YouTube videos during this lockdown period.
Yeah.
Tell us about those.
Well, I really, really, really reluctantly done, because I sort of, at first, before the lockdown and everything, I was one of those people that go, oh man, just all of this weird content, just content every day, putting up just a bunch of, because I'm kind of old school in that regard. I kind of like, man, how much is it worth if you just put up content every day like everybody else? Not everybody else, you know what I mean? Just saying, like, like a lot of people put up a lot of content every day, and I always thought, like, man, does that cheapen things a little bit? Does it, what's going on with that? I thought before, but then I took a different angle with it. I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to take this time to tell my story, to talk about, some of the people I've played with, in just more of a storytelling kind of way, and give little guitar lessons and things like that, little tips on guitar and my philosophy on guitar and what's important to me about music, guitar playing, blues history, a lot of blues history and things like that. And it turned out to be, definitely something I'd done from my heart, and people responded to it in a positive way. So I turned it around and I just thought about it in a slightly different way than just putting up content of me sitting there playing, a million notes per second, something like that. I just kind of thought about, okay, what can I do? What can I do? Can I do this in a more of a soulful, heartfelt way? And it's been really nice, and really people have what do you say? Like, people have really appreciated it, seems,
And I guess
makes me feel good.
It's been helpful for you too in terms of finding a way of still being able to connect with your audience.
Absolutely. And it's just, I came to music in a really everybody together, joyful celebration of life and music and everything, because I grew up in church, So a small part of it to me is sort of like that still with this. I turned this YouTube lesson thing into, like going back to ground zero, almost going back to the beginning with me, and everybody kind of together, and most of the comments and everything have been really wonderful, and everybody's appreciative, because right now, a lot of people do have time to kind of watch your videos and hear your story, and I think a lot of times when I hear other musicians' story, it helps me think about my own life and things that I maybe didn't think about, or, many different things.
A new label for you this time around with Cleopatra Records. Tell us about how that connection came to be.
Well, that connection came very, very, very easy. I mean, it kind of just fell in my lap, and it just seemed to work really cool because, I've, released independently, and I kind of, I plan to do that some more and things like that. But, I felt that right at this time, I'm right at a, crossroads where I kind of need or want the help of a label to do one part of it, and then I can work on another part, and maybe together we can work together, and I can do more than I could alone.
Yep.
They can handle a certain part of the promotion and the distribution, and those were big things, that I would have to try and do on my own, so with the label, it helps out, in many different ways like that. So, and I basically, with the label, I was working on a project for the label, and then one of their PR agents, I talked to and kind of struck up a little bit of a friendship with. We just talked, and the next thing I was talking to the label head, and we struck up a deal. That simple. After all this time,
Simple as that.
Yeah.
If you could place a theme on this album, what do you think would it be? Is there a universal theme that sort of runs through the songs?
Yeah, well, it actually ties into what I was talking about before with my blues pathway. It's basically just going right back around to the things that I really, really love. I was in Memphis in Arkansas. I played the King Biscuit Blues Festival last October, and it had a different meaning. I've played that festival many times, but this time it had a really special meaning to me in a different way, and I just really connected, and I said, you know what, it's time for me to do a blues record. And I mean, blues a lot of times gets a bad rap, and a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't like blues because they only hear one side of it. But I want to try and make blues, maybe dress it up a little bit, kind of, all of the things that I really loved when I was first getting into blues and when I was first going out to hear music live was that excitement of not really knowing what's going to happen, and, just being excited in all different kinds of blues, when I was old enough to come out to clubs and things, and people like Robert Cray, Chris Kane, and different people like that, in Chicago blues, that energy of Chicago blues, and hearing somebody like Muddy Waters or Sonny Boy Williamson and that whole thing, it was really like a club happy atmosphere. And a lot of times blues gets pigeonholed as being sad music, or something like that, or, I got the blues or whatever. But from my perspective and from my the way that I look at it, it was like party music as well as all of these different things. It had music, it had songs that you could relate to, in a way, whether it be happy, sad, or whatever, it was just kind of universal in that sense,
So from what you've just described to me there, My Blues Pathway is a very fitting title for the album. And for you, there really hasn't been much of a deviation from that pathway. It's been an ongoing love affair with the blues, hasn't it?
Yes, it really, really has, in some way, shape, form, because that's really the base of my music is blues. And I just want to really highlight it and also shed a lot of light on well, shed some light on other blues artists too, because I feel that's a part of the blues lineage, is to like kind of let these songs, these blues songs, kind of, you know, a lot of blues artists would do covers. That's sort of like in the style, you know, it's like any other kind of traditional art form or whatever. You know, there's younger people from the next generation carrying on some of the parts of that, you know, whatever it is genre, well, be it Cuban music or whatever, you know, there's still people carrying that on. So I really want to kind of like do that on this record. It was important to me to pick some covers too.
And the covers that you've chosen, you haven't necessarily chosen classically, universally known songs. You've gone for some lesser known treasures there. Was that part of the criteria?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there was so many songs, you know, from playing blues for so long, you know, and playing with different artists, it just was like, oh man, this song is really cool, or, you know, this is really obscure, and maybe in some kind of way that would make a person, you know, reach back and kind of listen to this music, you know, some of the more obscure artists, you know.
And the covers do blend beautifully with your new songs as well. So you've picked a perfect balance there. Yeah. Hey, you got the great Charlie Musselwhite on the album. You and Charlie go back a long way, don't you?
Yeah, we go back to the early 2000s. I mean, I forgot. It's been like, you know, almost 20 years almost, you know, that I played in his band, and we've known each other, and it was a fantastic time. And it's funny, before the lockdown, we were actually going to meet in Mississippi and go to this juke joint festival and everything, and just kind of hang out, because I haven't seen him and hung out in a long time, you know, but I'm sure we'll still do it at a later date.
He was something of a mentor to you back in the early days, wasn't he?
Absolutely, because, you know, he was in Chicago in the early 60s. I mean, so he really saw firsthand a lot of these legends, and he's a legend himself. So it's like, it's just incredible, some of the stories that he would tell me, you know, about, you know, people like Little Walter or seeing Muddy, or, you know, different people.
Talk about some of the songs on the album. The one that closes the album, Life Gave Me a Dirty Deal by Duke Boy Bonner. What appealed to you about that one that made it one you wanted to cover?
Well, you know, I've always, throughout my career, always been sort of a really positive person, and never wanted to really talk about anything negative or anything like that in my music. But I really felt like, you know, I wanted to kind of shed a light on a different side of, you know, just a different side of Kirk Fletcher, you know, and I wanted to talk about things like, you know, I always think, you know, like a lot of people, you know, they smile, like the people that you think are happy and smile all the time, they might be the ones hurting the most. So this was a really simple, bare bones way, you know. I listened at those lyrics and I love Juke Boy Bonner, so it just kind of just made so much sense to like do this song at this time, you know, because it really is pretty straight ahead and to the point. You know?
A couple of co-writes with Richard Cousins, best known, of course, for his work with Robert Cray. Tell us about the songwriting process between the two of you, how it worked.
Well, you know, I wish everything in life was that easy. I mean, Richard Cousins is like somebody I listened to for most of my life with Robert Cray. You know, and I realized pretty early on that he was a co-writer with Robert Cray on some of his famous songs. You know, I think Right Next Door is one that they wrote together, and it just was like, he's a neighbor of mine here in Switzerland, actually.
Oh, is he really?
Pretty close to me, maybe like 40 minutes away. So, yeah, I mean, it was like he knew where I wanted to go with these two songs that he helped me on, kind of before I even really said anything. I mean, like the No Place to Go, he already knew kind of what groove and where it should be, you know, and kind of knew what I was trying to say, because I guess that whole like their music, Robert Cray's music is in my DNA. And then we have a lot of similarities when it comes to the music that we like, soul music, Southern soul, and, stuff like that. So it was just really a lot of common ground.
And Richard lives there in Switzerland as well. Is there a blues scene in Switzerland of great note?
Yeah, there's one of the greatest blues festivals anywhere is the Lucerne Blues Festival.
Okay.
And they like have American blues legends and just all different kinds of people, at that blues festival, and that's been going on for a long time. And Montreux has always had really obscure blues artists throughout time, So when you think about it, there is a lot of blues festivals in Switzerland. I mean, a scene per se, there's clubs even that have blues on a regular basis too, like one in Bern. So I would say it's probably as strong as anywhere, really.
Excellent.
It wouldn't be as strong as Chicago, but but it's pretty good in Germany and France, and the UK is really close. So yeah.
Now you mentioned the track "No Place to Go," which you chose as the first single release from the album. What led you to choose that one as the first one to drop?
I felt like lyrically it could, it was something that had a little bit of substance to it. It was sort of like telling the story, hopefully making people think a little bit, and it just had I liked the groove and the horns and everything, and I thought it was a strong first single,
D is for Danny, a great track and a nod to guitarist Danny Freeman, who we don't know a lot about down here in Australia. What can you tell us about him and his influence on you?
Yeah, well, Danny Freeman is a Texas blues guitar player that played with the Vaughan Brothers. He played with Taj Mahal, Bob Dylan, a lot of different people, and he's just a, fantastic guitar player, and he's always has his own unique twist on music. He just does it his way, and he can play something really traditional and it be within that context, but still his own twist on it. And he was a person that lived in Los Angeles right when I was coming on the scene, in the mid 90s. He was there. So when I was old enough to go to clubs, then he was playing, so I could see him live, and he was all instrumental. He didn't sing. It was all instrumental music, and it was so soulful that I just, it was just amazing. And at first, it was like, oh man, this guy played with Stevie Ray Vaughan, ruling, and all that kind of stuff. But then, I realized, man, this guy has got a lot to say, and he can actually play piano and organ too, and he was part of the Antone's house band for many years, and just a wonderful, musician, and person.
I see it was recorded around Christmas time last year, so by the time it gets released next month, it's going to be about 9 months in between recording and the release. Is that a usual time period for you, or were you holding it over in the hope that the touring situation would open up?
Well, it's hard to say. I really like to, record it, do everything really fast, but I just think that's the way it worked out. I definitely thought, yes, I should release this no matter what, even if the touring situation, doesn't pick up, I should still release it because, I was starting to figure out that, yeah, we have kind of a captive audience.
Yeah. I love the cover of the Chris Kane song, Place in This World Somewhere. Chris is a good friend of yours, I believe.
Yeah, Chris Kane is. That's one of my heroes, and I just always loved that song. It kind of seemed like a lot of these songs tied together in some way, I don't particularly know how, but but they all tied together, It's like talking about real life situations, and that's what the blues is to me, really. It's like real life, talking about your problems and trying to find an answer. and all that kind of stuff.
I would regard Chris as very much a contemporary of yours and someone who's probably travelled along the same blues pathway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess if there's a pivotal track on the album, a central track, I'd point to Struggle for Grace. I saw where you describe that as somewhat autobiographical.
Yeah, I've always just tried to be graceful, have grace, and try and what's my legacy? What am I trying to say? At the end of the day, what would I would like to be remembered, for and everything. Not in like a sad way or something like that, but just, you live your legacy every day kind of, so what are you going to say,
Aside from the YouTube videos, have you been using your lockdown time for any other creative work? Like, you've been doing any writing? Or can we expect a whole lot of COVID-based songs down the track?
No, I haven't been doing a lot of writing. I've been doing a lot of taking it in. That's the way I am. I usually take in a whole lot of inspiration, records, and revisit songs, and then I'll jot down ideas, just not even whole songs, just, and then when I feel the creativity come in, or whatever like that, I'll sit down and try and work out a song or something like that from the inspiration that I've brought in. But right now with COVID, for the first few months, I was so depressed, you can't help but be depressed, because everything that and you've done your whole life pretty much is in question. So I'm not really a writer when I'm going through the sad times or whatever. I'm more of a reflective type writer. I kind of, after everything is okay, then I'll write, again, and go, oh, that was really difficult. Let me write about it. Let me catch my breath and think about it, But this being so long, this lockdown being so long, that I am actually starting to kind of think creatively again. So, we'll see.
How do you think you'll look back on this album in a few years' time when we trust the world will be back to normal? Do you think you'll always look on it and think of it in terms of the state of the world at the time that it was released?
Since I recorded it before all this went down and all of the things that happened, I think it'll be something that I'll always remember, and it'll be kind of monumental in my career, sort of. Man, I released that through all of this, because this is going to go down in history as being one of the craziest thing in history, and I released the record during that time. So it's just as sad and crazy as it is right now, it's also new and something that I will always remember. So it's definitely difficult to say, but I don't think it'll all be negative.
And what are the plans for you down the track for the remainder of this year? Is there any light down the end of the tunnel there for live gigs?
Yeah, well, actually, I live in Europe, so there's some gigs coming in, actually. In Italy, I have a couple gigs at the end of the month. Then I have a few in France in October and November, just a couple, So there is, at least I do see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and I can at least get out and play a little bit.
Oh, I'm so envious. There's no light in the end of our tunnel down here, unfortunately.
I know, it's so sad. All of my friends in Australia, too,
And we've lost some wonderful venues. The Caravan Club, where you played just earlier this year, is gone and won't be returned.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they've shut the doors forever, unfortunately. So you're probably one of the last people to play there.
Oh, man. Yeah, because I was just there in February?
Yeah.
Was it February? Oh,
it was,
man. Because I remember it was right when I got back to LA, it was and then I was there, and then I was going to stay longer, I think, in LA. And then it just, that's when everything happened. So I said, I better back to Switzerland, home,
Yeah. Well, the caravan shut its doors in March when the lockdown started, and about a month or two later they announced they won't be coming back.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a real shame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Man.
But anyway, congratulations on this album, Kirk, and it's fantastic to catch up with you again, and hopefully somewhere down the track when we're back to some sort of normal, we will see you down here again, and there'll be some wonderful new venues opening up for you.
I'm sure. I can't wait, and thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.